It's so good to have you guys here. Welcome to the Ready, Set, Go podcast. My name is John and I'm from Malaysia. Please tell us about yourself.
So my name's James and I'm from Sydney, Australia.
My name is Imran and I am from the beautiful island of Barbados.
So good. So the conversation we're going to have today is on the subject of how we relate to givers. Now, in the sports movement, we frame everything we do around this word sustainability, right? So there are three legs to this stool. The first leg would be generosity, the second leg, sustainability, and then the third would be resource mobilization, of which one can be employed, be an entrepreneur, or also mobilize resources. So we're going to focus on this today. And so tell me, from a biblical perspective, what's the mindset that we should have as ministry leaders, sports leaders, when we relate to people that are generous in their giving to what we do in the sports movement?
Great question. I think for me, I see this as a partnership. Where there are individuals who are praying about God's mission. There are individuals who are going. They are actively engaging God's mission field. And then there are those who may not be in a position to go, but they're giving and providing resources to help those individuals that are going. And I think those three things combine for a kingdom perspective of what does it mean to advance God's kingdom in the earth, and what is the role of different individuals who have different skills or different resources, different abilities, and how do we ensure that everybody's playing their role in that regard?
And James, yourself?
Yeah, my relationship with donors over the years, from a biblical perspective, is thinking that they're another part of the ecosystem of God's kingdom who've been blessed perhaps with wealth. Some of them aren't particularly wealthy, but they want to give to something. So my attitude is, well, how do we help them give wisely and judiciously? And that could be to the sport movement. Not always, but maybe it is. And so it's just about having a conversation with people and just understanding where their heart is and not pressuring in any way, but I think just trying to understand, well, how can I help them contribute to the kingdom? And if that's through being generous, then how do I help them be generous? Let's give them something to be generous to.
One of the books and resources that really shaped my life was by a person called Henry Blackaby, and he wrote a book called Experiencing God. God is always at work, and we should always be looking for ways to join him. And what you've said about givers and generous people joining with us, but joining actually him in what he is doing in the mission field. Do you guys have a story you could share to kind of land how you've seen this play out?
I had a donor ring once and say, how are you guys going with regards to your finances? And this guy is reasonably wealthy, but he's a big kingdom thinker, and he has always been generous to kingdom work all over the world, not just to our organisation and hence sports ministry. And I said to him at the time, I said, look, actually, right at the moment, we're not travelling so badly. All our projects are well budgeted for. We have finances enough to continue with them. So look, right at the moment, and I actually said to him, I said, if you've got some other kingdom thing that you can give to, then you go and give to that. And he was absolutely staggered that I even was that honest with him. And such was the result of that conversation that he said, look, that is amazing. I've never had anyone say that to me before. Usually people say, hey, can you give us more money? He said, look, the fact is I've got money to give. I've got more than enough to give. If you need any, you just give me a call. But for now, yes, I'm going to go elsewhere and give to another organisation. And I share that story, I think, just because it built this incredible level of trust. And he was on this journey of exploring, well, who can I give to? And he had given to us in the past. And it was just a beautiful moment of being open and honest with him, but realising he was part of our story, but not necessarily wedded to us. And it wasn't me going and saying, no, we really need you to always be part of what we're doing. So it was just, I don't know if that sort of answers the question, but it was just as I was thinking through as you were asking the question, I thought that was a really standout moment in my journey of just dealing with donors, of just that being beautifully honest and helping him understand that actually I can give to so many different things, and just releasing him for that. And he has since come back and been incredibly generous to us at different points. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll just kind of write on the back of that. We had a relationship or have a relationship with this particular partner, and they gave us funds for a specific project. And we did the project, completed it, and we wrote a report to the partner and said, hey, here's what happened. It was an incredible event. Here's some of the results of that. And here's some money that was left over from this event. What would you like for us to do with it? We can send it back to you, or we can reallocate it to something else. You please help us to understand. And they wrote back to us and said, thank you, hold the funds and reallocate it to something else. A few weeks later, we were invited to spend some time with that particular family, a high net worth family. And they said they wanted to meet with us because they've never had anybody say to them, we want to give you money back. They've never experienced that before. And so they were completely blown away. And they met with us, learned a little bit more about what we were doing. And the next gift they gave us was 10 times more what they gave initially because of that bit of honesty. But that particular partner shared their story with me, and it was quite interesting, actually. They went on a missions trip to South Africa, and while on the missions trip, they felt like God spoke to them and said, man, like, you will never be able to communicate the gospel in a way that relates to the local context like one of these local guys can. How can you go back home and make as much money as possible so that you can empower local guys to have local impact where they are? And that was kind of like his God moment of, look, I want to continue in God's mission. I want to continue to contribute to God's kingdom, but I feel like there's a better way that I can do it. I don't have to travel to South Africa when there's so many believers there who can do a much better job of reaching those people than I can. And therefore, he went back, and that's exactly what he did, made tons of money so that he could give to people to help where it happened locally.
And how beautiful on that you were able to give him an opportunity and provide an opportunity and space for him to express his gifting, if you like, that God's blessed him with. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So in situations like that, how does one mitigate against a temptation to almost see the relationship as transactional? I've got something I need, they've got something they can offer. How do you mitigate against that?
So I actually learned about that prior to this role that I'm in at the moment. It was actually in my previous life. I worked at the bank. So it's related. So let me run with this story for a minute. I remember I just started working for the bank, and my job was to sell banking products to people. And I got in touch with a potential client. It was a cold call. He was a big-time businessman in the earth-moving business in Australia. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I've only just started at the bank, and this guy's going to... And I remember going to him, and I had no skills at all. No skills. I just knew what products I had in the toolbox to sell to this guy. And I walked in, and almost my first question was, so tell me what banking products you've got. And I just went straight for the, tell me about your business products you need and what potential products could I sell you. And that was the whole conversation. It wasn't until I was driving home that I just went, I've completely messed that up. And I had messed it up. The guy never spoke to me ever again. But it was just a real lesson in, no, you need to actually build relationship. This is not just transactional. What can I pull out of my toolbox and give you, and what can you give me, and how can I benefit from you? Because let's be honest, in the world of not-for-profits, when we are seeking funds to survive, it's very easy to say, hey, you've got wealth, I need your wealth. So that was a real moment for me to go, no, I've got to build relationship. This is not about transactions. This is about me saying, what lights you up? So coming back to your particular donor who's, been in a place overseas and said there's a need here, well, what are the needs that really interest you? Is it sports ministry? Or is it children's ministry? Is it something else? What are those things? And actually, maybe I'm not the best recipient of your funds. Maybe it's someone else. So anyway, I think there's something in that transactional piece that needs to be completely offset by building a firm relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, definitely it is what is on that person's heart relative to God's mission.
Yeah.
And how do I serve them as much as they're serving me? And so I do see it as a dynamic relationship where it's not just I am receiving funds, it's not just transactional, but that it can actually be transformational for both parties. That this person feels as though they really are making a difference with their finances, and that thing that they care for related to the kingdom of God, that they're being a good steward and they're making a good investment where that is concerned. I think the second thing is I always ask partners questions about their family, about their needs, about challenges. I can tell you all of their kids' names, their spouses' names. Sometimes I've stayed in their homes. And so the relationship moves beyond just receiving a bit of money. It is, man, I love you.
And do you keep notes on all that?
Yeah.
Because I find the problem is I talk to a donor and they tell me all about their wife and their children, or their husband and their children. And then you go to talk to them 6 months later and you think, I really need to connect with what was their kids doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing? What do they stay? I've got to keep notes.
Yeah,
So
I
read
keep
the
notes of all of that.
But then you sound like a champion when you ring up and you say, so how's Johnny going with his,
100%.
this education? They go, you remember that? Oh, yeah, of course I remember that.
Yeah, and one of our mentors in the movement, what he's done is he has a list of every single partner, their spouse, their children on his daily prayer list, and he just prays for them.
Right.
I mean, the fact that you guys are, encouraging us to consider a disciple-making relationship, a praying relationship, a love and nurturing, trust and care relationship, I think will really help to mitigate.
It is a beautiful thing when you can ring one of your donor supporters and not even have a conversation about money or projects that need funding or anything else. It's just, how you going? What's happening? Oh, can we pray about that? Do you mind if our team prays about that for you? Let's commit that to prayer. And then you call them a week later. How's that going? That's just a beautiful thing to be able to do.
100%. And before you go, because I'm really excited about this point, is I even ask about challenges related to the business. How can I pray for your business? Because I want your business to continue to be successful as well, right? And so if there are new ventures, if they're breaking new ground, if they're doing new things, I want to put that on my prayer list as well so that they know that I am also interested in that dynamic.
Okay, let's be a little practical. I want you to visualize a family or a partner or a giver in your country. Okay, I think sometimes our listeners might think the promised land for fundraising lies in this country or that country, specifically in the West, especially if you come from our part of the world. Mm-hmm. James is the guy with money, right? So let's think about a major giver, a partner in our own nation. Talk about the rhythm, the frequency, the content. Like, are you asking every single month, every single email? There's an ask. Give us an example.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I'll two examples. One is typically the rhythm is once a year, so it's annually. But then there may be special projects that you know that this particular person may be passionate about, and so you may return with a special request. That's an exception. However, throughout the course of that year, funds may be dispersed quarterly. Sometimes you receive a lump sum. So there's always continual engagement either way. One of the things that we try and do is to share reports with that person who's given on at least every 2 months, sometimes once a month, sometimes once a quarter, depending on the individual. Everybody doesn't like frequent reports. Everybody doesn't like frequent contact relative to, 2 pages or 2 sheets of what is happening, lots of details. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is what we've found is that the more local you go, generosity looks a little bit different. So it's not always money. So in Barbados, there are people that are incredibly generous with their facility or with their skills. We host a multiplay school. Somebody would come and they would cook for the entire 21 days of the multiplay school, and they would charge us nothing. They're just giving of their skills. They're giving of their time. And I think for us is we've recognized that there's a dollar value connected to that. And even though they didn't give money, it allowed us to save money and we could still budget for it. And so locally, people aren't always able to give monetarily, but they're able to give of their time, of their resources, of their capabilities. And that's something that we continue to steward.
That's an excellent point. And James, I'm going to come to you on your communication mode and method and rhythm. But the frameworks that we use in giving would be time, talent, treasure, or LIFER, labor, influence, finance, expertise, and relationship, right? But tell us more about the communication style and method.
I actually think I'm possibly the world's worst fundraiser when it comes to this sort of thing in terms of creating a rhythm. And I know we've got to, but in fact, we're in the process at the moment of working out, okay, if we onboard someone, very marketing sort of language, if we bring someone in as a donor, how do we continue to bring them in closer? And it sort of irks me, that sort of marketing language. And we don't actually practice that at the moment. We've got a rhythm with regards to, we send out 3 newsletters a year, and those newsletters don't specifically ask for money. It's just, hey, here's a list of the projects that we're up to at the moment. Be encouraged by what the Lord's doing. Now, in that, we always have an opportunity to give. So there's a QR code or there's a response slip with a reply paid envelope. I'm a firm believer of make it as easy as possible for people to give to you. So whenever a communication goes out from our office, it will have some way of giving, but it might not be a direct ask. In fact, let me share an interesting story. A number of years ago, so we have an annual lunch, and at that lunch, we talk about the projects that we're involved in, and then at the end, historically, we used to say, okay, it's a fundraising lunch, get your checkbook out, there's a QR code on the screen, scan it, we're going to play 10 minutes of pretty background music while you write us a check. Well, someone came to our lunch and said, that's just so unlike you guys. Everything else you do as an organisation, and particularly in the sports ministry world, you give freely. It's a movement. You give it away, you take your brand off things, no one knows who you are. But then I come to your lunch and you do what everyone else does. Every other lunch I go to, they ask for money and they play this 10 minutes of background music. Why do you do that? And we went, that's actually a really good question. So the next year, I stood up at the lunch and said, and the invitation's already gone out at that stage when she was challenging us on that. So people were invited to a fundraising lunch, and I stood up at the very start of the lunch and said, this is actually not a fundraising lunch. Yes, you will have opportunity to give, but I'm going to tell you now, at the end of this lunch, there is no 10 minutes of pretty music where we're going to ask you to give. We're just going to share what the Lord's been doing. Well, at the end of the lunch, it was amazing. One lady came up to me and she said, that is fantastic. I want to go home. I always want to do these decisions with my husband. He can't be here. So now you've given me the opportunity to go home and chat to him about it. I really appreciate it. Well, she doubled what she normally gave. Another guy walked out and said, I really wish you'd given me the time. I said, why is that? And he goes, well, now I'll go home and I'll have all these different organisations on the kitchen bench with them, and I don't know who to give to. And I said, well, are they all kingdom things? And he said, yeah, they're all kingdom things. I said, well, just choose one of them and give, and if it's us, great. And if it's one of the other kingdom things, God's got that. He's like, really? And he could not believe they said that. And he doubled what he gave to us as well. So there's a real freedom it's totally countercultural to what the marketing people say, but just that opportunity to go, actually, we're not going to do what the rest of the world does. So we now send out the newsletters I mentioned, and in the alternate months, we will send out a letter, and it used to be called an appeal letter because it was very much like, oh, here's a project, and if you give $20,000, we're trying to raise $20,000, if you give to that, we don't do that anymore. We still say there's a need, but we don't specifically do the heartfelt cry out, because I'm a real firm believer in not playing on people's emotions and trying to manipulate people. I don't think it's biblical. I think it's more about, well, here's a project. If you have capacity to give, fantastic. So coming back to the original question of what's your rhythm, we have a rhythm of communications going out, but it's very much just like, here's what the Lord's doing. We're providing you opportunity to give if you want to give.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, and I love that because we see, here's what the Lord is doing. Like, how do you want to partner with him in helping us to make this happen? So it's never pointing the finger to what we are doing, but rather, like, whenever you give, you're partnering with the Lord, and it's inviting people to partner with God through their giving to help the gospel reach X, Y, or Z, etc.
I'd say I've also learned three simple things. One is that donors have a fatigue. They do experience fatigue. And so you got to acknowledge that, which is why we continually need to build relationships to backfill the pipeline of partnering. The second is that if your partner, your giver is in a business, then business have cycles of profitability and struggle. And it is what it is. And so that's also an opportunity for us to mentor, to support, to encourage, and to be really empathetic. But the third one is learning how to treat people equally, because somebody who may not be very generous today or cannot be extremely generous today with finances may one day become such. So really loving, right? Having this heart of love, which both of you have expressed. But let me ask you, biggest mistake you've made related to a major giver, and I'll start. Okay, so I was invited to this person's home. I went to the home and they were very generous. They had a massive house by the lake. And they said, if you want to use our car, just go ahead. And I needed to get a bit of shopping done for the family. So I borrowed their car and they said, we'll see you at dinner tonight. I said, yes. And so I drove to a mall pretty far away. And these were the days where, you didn't have free minutes and free data. And I was a foreigner and I was visiting this country. I didn't have a number and I was too cheap, too stingy to go buy a prepaid SIM card, and I missed the dinner. I stayed in the mall and I went shopping, and I got home like 9 or 10 that night. The whole house was quiet. And the next morning, we got up to go to church, and obviously I apologized, and they said it's okay. But until today, they don't talk to me, and I don't talk to them. And I learned a huge lesson on communication, being punctual, sticking to commitments, but also realizing they probably put in a huge amount of effort for that dinner that night. I don't know who they had invited to it, if they had invited other people to it. Huge mistake. Okay, what about you guys?
I did get invited to a lunch and I turned up once.
That's why you're on the panel.
Podcast. I turned up. That was progress. And look, it was lovely. And the gentleman who'd invited me had invited, I'm going to say, maybe 4 or 5 other business people, different business people in his friend network, specifically to hear about our organisation. And on reflection, I don't know if it was a big mistake, but I always, when I reflect on that time, my constant thought is, yeah, I spoke way too much. I mean, I didn't actually spend a lot of time asking them questions and going back to what we were saying right at the start, trying to find out what their interests are. What's your interest? What's your interest? And trying to gauge from that, because if nothing else, that would have helped me frame what I was talking about. But I didn't do that. I just, the host had said, tell us about your organisation. I just went, blah, for the rest of the lunch, pretty much. And in hindsight, that was a mistake.
Imran, yourself?
So I am still fairly at the beginning of this journey, and I've had the benefit of all of your mistakes and learning from your mistakes, hearing your stories. I think one of the things that I could have done well when I first started out was communication. I didn't have a clear communication strategy, and so receiving generosity from individuals, but not being faithful to keep them updated on what we were doing, the impact of our work, and just finding a rhythm in that. And so there were a few individuals that I felt like I could have done a much better job with. And I just wonder about how that affects just their willingness to continue to partner with our organization today. But yeah, I feel like I'm fairly comfortable at this point because I'm trying to manage based on all that I would have learned from your mistakes, John, and others.
I was just going to say on that too, when you're talking about communication, one of the things that I've really tried to do, and it's been acknowledged actually by some of our supporters, is try and relate to all of them, whether they're a $5 a month giver or they're a $5,000 a month giver, just relate to them all the same. Shit. And I mean, it's pretty easy sometimes just to go, well, here's what I sent the last person. I'm going to send you that, and I'll just change it a little bit for your context. And I think that's been helpful.
You know, every giver has a different appetite in getting involved in your work, probably. So do you have an example of someone that hasn't only been interested to give of finances, but actually have wanted to give of something beyond? So I'll share an example. One of our partners used to play professional golf, and because he had appetite to contribute to the whole life coaching golf curriculum, he actually mobilized a couple of his retired pro golfing buddies that played in the PGA, and they came and they helped to shape that. And it was so fun because there was a real genuine need with him having the right expertise to contribute, and that was just a joy for that to see that happen. Do you guys have a story of somebody coming close?
Yeah, so there's one guy who is living in the US. He's a businessman, but he's originally from East Asia, and so he is really passionate about South Asia. Sorry, he's really, really passionate about cricket, and he wrote a book on cricket, and so he's made contributions, but he's also gone a step further to visit some of those countries and help provide training to coaches around cricket, how to leverage some of the stuff that he wrote and how to use cricket as a vehicle to teach principles and values. And so we've seen some of that where people initially get on board because they want to give financially, but then they find a space where they can plug in and really contribute to the movement. And it's been really special to watch. Sometimes it works really well. Other times it doesn't work so well.
Yeah, a number of years ago, I remember talking to a friend of mine about the different projects we're involved in the sport movement and funding different projects. And in our organisation, we were creating these buckets, and if we raise funds, we put money in that bucket for that particular project. So as we spent them, we knew what was being spent from that bucket. So at any point, we could say, well, we've got this much funding available for that particular project. And we had numerous buckets. And we had a lady working for us, and she was an accountant. And if I wanted an update on those buckets, it would take her days to go through all the accounts and work it all out. Anyway, I was sharing this with a friend over dinner once, and he goes, oh, I can fix that. And so within a week, he'd come to me with an Excel spreadsheet, and obviously he had Excel skills far beyond my capacity. And he said, right, you just cut and paste all your accounting update into here, so a report, just cut paste pretty simply, and press go on that button. 30 seconds later, I had the report. It was absolutely extraordinary. And so this guy, I mean, he's a financial donor as well, but that was his biggest contribution to our organisation. And we still use that spreadsheet today. That was probably 10 years ago.
So we're coming to the end of our podcast. I want your best advice to someone who's starting out on their journey of fundraising, resource mobilization for what God has laid on their heart. Your best nugget.
Yeah, my best nugget is something that somebody passed on to me, and they said there is no difference between missions and fundraising. It's all a part of the same. It's all a part of the same thing. It's whoever you are approaching relative to fundraising, they are helping you contribute to God's mission, and so don't see it as two separate things. That will be my encouragement.
Can I have two nuggets? The first one would be it's about establishing relationship, and God has clearly put people in this world who have wealth, and to come back to what Imran was sharing before, business people who've done incredibly well in business for the sake of the kingdom. And I think it's part of our job as not-for-profits to say, here's an opportunity to give. Let's make that as clear and as easy for you. And if it's not us, that's great, someone else, but let's make it clear on how you can give. So try and make it really obvious what your organisation is doing so a donor can understand it and choose whether to give or not. So I think that's one. The other thing is think laterally. So a number of years, I've got an agricultural background. A number of years ago, I thought agricultural cycles, they come and go. People don't always have cash, but they might have commodity. So we actually receive donations of cotton, of wheat and canola. And they get delivered to us in our name, and then I get the choice of selling them when I want to turn them into cash. That has been remarkable. So think laterally it might not always be money. It might not be a spreadsheet. It could be something else that someone can give that could be a commodity that then you can utilize.
And here's one nugget I heard a couple of years ago. If you ask for funding, you get advice. And if you ask for advice, you get funding. It's been so good to have the two of you here, and to all our listeners for your time with us. May God bring increase in all that you do, especially as you serve your givers.